Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Russell Cotes Art Gallery and Museum Management Committee. And our officer, Sinead Callahan, I think, needs to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Chair. So just to read out the housekeeping, please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council's website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcasts by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of the building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sinead. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Mr. Alan Frost.
Thank you much. Do any of the councillors here have any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interests on any items of this agenda? Thank you very much. You do have the minutes of the last meeting, which took place on the 25th of January this year. Are there any amendments that you would wish to make to those minutes as published? No? Are there any matters arising from those minutes which members might wish to raise? In which case, I will assume the minutes to be agreed. Yes. Agreed. Thank you very much. That allows us to move to any public issues. And Sinead, have there been any registered with you?
No, we've received no public issues today. Thank you, Chair.
In which case, we can now move to item 5 of our agenda, which is the Museum Update Report, which is agenda item 5 in your papers. And I welcome your presentation, Sarah, for this report.
Thank you, Chair. I won't obviously go through the report in detail, just pick up a couple of things and very happy to answer any questions. The first one is really around the visitor figures. So for this 6-month period, we saw our visitor figures down slightly or somewhat on this time last year, about 9%, but I think last year was up 9%, so essentially we're kind of where we were. Income is only down 2% because we've restructured some of our charging. So I think anecdotally it seems to be the case everywhere that the sort of very unsettled summer weather really limited visitors, and obviously sort of cost of living kind of concerns. There was an uncertainty and an uneasiness, wasn't there, which is I think is probably partly to do with that. We had a very strong beginning of the summer. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. We had a very strong spring and less strong summer. That's the way it seemed to work, which is the opposite of what happened last year. I think that the next 6 months should be quite good because we've got a really good exhibition offer at the moment, which I think will draw in local visitors. So I'm, hoping that we will come to we'll be roughly where we were, which is around 50 odd thousand visitors. The major issue from a museum point of view, I think, is that we have now finally been called to make a report for our accreditation. So this was last done in 2015, and normally it's every 5 years, but COVID has given a 5-year delay on it. So accreditation is really important for a museum because it sort of sets out the national benchmarks for good governance, good customer care, good collections care, and museum offer. It's incredibly long and protracted exercise of policies and plans on a very elaborate portal with the Arts Council that we have to complete. So it's a very large amount of work. So later on in the agenda, you'll see that you're going to sign off a couple of policies that we just have to have in place for that. So it's a particular challenge for us at the moment because governance is a major part of the accreditation reporting, and obviously our governance is in a state of some change. We don't have to make the application until May, but obviously the longer I leave it, the greater the chance that something else has changed and we'll have to go back to the starting point again. So I'm going to try and get this through as quickly as possible in the next few months, hopefully by January, so that we've got that all kind of signed off. I don't see any major issues. But it's obviously always a really interesting experience to go through and to double check what we're doing to make sure that we are meeting the standards as far as we can within our resources. So that's a sort of major activity for the moment. The other thing I just wanted to mention was Artists and Purbeck, so a new show for many people came to the private view, which was a really buzzy event. And we've got lots of nice merchandise. So do calendars and cards and all the rest of it, tea towels. So do come do your Christmas shopping. So that I hope is going to be a really good, a good exhibition. Another one I wanted to mention. Oh yes, we've been trying to kind of raise our profile sort of nationally and so on. So we did get a really lovely article in Country Life. I think it sent it round to people. We also had some coverage in the Museums Journal, which I couldn't find before I came out today, but some good sort of national coverage, which is always helpful. And similarly, we've been putting ourselves up for nominating for various awards sort of regionally. We just won Bournemouth in Bloom last week, the gardening team. So it's all volunteers. So that's really good achievement. So and then we won Destination Management Board award in the summer, and then we're up for some. We're up for some awards the next couple of weeks. I've slightly forgotten the different ones that we've done, but anyway, they're quite a number of awards that we're in the running for, which is good. And the last one really may cover up later is I've been putting in for quite a lot of applications for funding. I think that the work, it's very, very competitive at the moment. So whereas before we used to have really quite a good record on it, I think it's much more competitive because everyone's chasing obviously these kind of grants. So we have put a few in. Haven't heard anything, so it's not looking terribly good. But the main one obviously is the MEND 4 application. So that finally went in August. We've applied to Arts Council for £1.5 million. That will obviously have a massive impact on the maintenance of the museum, particularly the front facade and various work around security and drainage, we were just talking about, fire safety and so on. So we will hear whether we have been successful or not in February. So that is the sort of the main one. But as I said, even though we're through to the second round on that, I understand it is still highly competitive. So we will wait to hear.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Are there any questions that people might wish to ask Sarah with regard to the report? Certainly, from my point of view, can I congratulate you and your colleagues on the two shows, the Belarus and most recently, of course, the Art Purbeck. The latter was very, very well attended at the opening, and I think is a really remarkable exhibition of work generated, in this area from very distinguished artists of the period. So congratulations on its curation, its hanging, and the way in which it is appealing to such a wide audience. So very good news that. Less good news, not of your making, of course. I noticed that 42 building faults, were recorded and relating to water ingress. I was a little put out the other day when a captain of industry was saying, about infrastructure, you could, for example, fill potholes, as if a single pothole is rather insignificant. But as we're all very aware collectively, they are undermining the entire infrastructure of operation. Similarly, the odd drip multiplied by 42 is really very serious. and we shouldn't really, seek to cover that. The building is very, very vulnerable, and we are looking forward to that February announcement, without which I am most fearful for the ongoing stability of the Russell Cotes building. Because what you have listed and what we will discuss later in our agenda, the MEN project is critical to moving towards some stabilisation of the building. Are there any other matters?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo what you said about the state of the building. I mean, this is something we've talked about before quite a lot, and I think it's an amazing tribute to Sarah and all the staff that they are working in those conditions. I think most of us would find that extremely challenging. So brilliant work. Secondly, just to say thank you to Sarah and the team who are working incredibly hard on the externalization process, which is obviously ongoing, but I know that's taking up an awful lot of time, and I'm assuming, combining that with the day-to-day running of the museum and all the things you have to do, everybody's doing a phenomenal job, and I think that's worth again noting. And then finally, it was interesting to hear about the challenges of seeking funding from a wider point of view. We know that arts and culture is always under pressure. It's particularly under pressure at the minute, and so there's obviously lots of conversations going on, lots of lobbying, lots of advocacy going on. So if there's anything further that internally in the council we can do as far as that is concerned, obviously, personally, I'm sort of trying to do that on all sorts of different fronts in the arts and culture world. On behalf of our MPOs and grassroots organisations, but obviously also very importantly in terms of the Russell Cotes, happy to do more if more is if I can achieve anything. So just off that offer of help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Lisa.
I was just curious, and maybe it's a question for Andy, I don't know, that is the council still responsible for the building? And if we have employees working in there and there's water coming in, does that not need to be fixed by the council?
Well, I think the answer is yes, and it is within the responsibility of the authority currently, and will be until such times as incorporation that takes place. So, which at the earliest will be April of next year or possibly later.
So when we put it, so a leak is found, we report it, and what happens then?
Sarah.
Yeah, so the system is that the report's made to building maintenance, and if it's urgent, considered to be urgent, they will they can do something about it. They will try and do something about it. But these are issues which are incredibly complex, and if you've seen behind the scenes, you'll know the state of those. But it's a very, very significant project, so it's not easily sorted. So that's where we are. So if it's a sort of minimal problem, then there's a broken something or other, they can sort of deal with it. Otherwise, it's sort of just pushed into this kind of long grass of it's too difficult to deal with, and that's kind of where we are. And there is no funding to kind of support this, so that's why we've gone to MEND 4, and behind this MEND 4 that deals with the front facade of the museum. But obviously at the back, we know that there's water coming through. We've got black mold and things that are described in that report. We've got no plan at the moment for how we're going to deal with that. So the building team do what they can, but it's very costly and not an easy fix. So we do a bit of urgent repair and a bit of fundraising in this kind of way too. But obviously the point of externalisation will be that we will then have a much better planned approach to ongoing proper maintenance, which will be done regularly instead of this urgent only. So there's no, but so any pressure that councillors can give is really helpful to us to make it go, take it up the agenda.
Councillor Williams.
Just to put it in perspective, I've been associated one way or another since 2012, and this is not new. This has been going on for many, many years. I remember at some point, I can't remember which year it was, we spent over £1 million repairing a roof, not the roof, because there's more than one. And it's just an ongoing issue that, as Sarah says, we have to get to grips with once we're independent.
Andy.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add a bit of context to that. Libraries come under my portfolio, and I know Lawrence used to look after the libraries. We have similar problems. That's not to in any way downgrade the issues of Russell Cotes. We know they are really, really serious, and it is completely unacceptable that staff have to work in those conditions. I would just, lots of our libraries are in a similar state, or some of our libraries are in a similar state. They need significant investment. They've got leaks and they've got roof problems, and I think one is currently closed. It might be Winton, but one of them is currently closed for some repairs. So it is a wider problem, and it's, in my view, it's a culmination, if you like, of decades. Well, certainly a long time, a long period of underinvestment in local government, and also perhaps in certain quarters of a lack of appreciation about the value of arts and culture. You know, everybody talks about potholes and fixing the roads. Yes, of course, that's important, but actually, you know, arts and culture it doesn't just need revenue, it needs massive capital funding as well, capital investment. So let's hope that some of that's on its way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move now to item 6, always a pleasant item on our annual agenda, which concerns acquisitions, loans and disposals. And you're all aware that it is the responsibility of this committee to sign off any sales or transfers of items from the collection. Although some of them are rather bizarre, as is the case for one of the items today, which is an ancient washing machine that was probably in the possession of the then resident janitor of the museum. Sarah, perhaps you can help us with these items.
Thank you. Yes, I'll take them through from acquisitions. So as well, to say we're not really very actively looking for acquisitions. We've got a very, very tight acquisition policy. We're not in a position to want to acquire more unless we're going to really use it. But we've got some interesting interesting items there that have been we've taken photographs, a painting. Alan Frost, one of our members, has given us an ivory fan that's related to historic Victorians. So those are the items that we have brought into the collection. They're all donations. Loans, interestingly, we lent about 7 works to this extraordinary exhibition of Pre-Raphaelites in Forlì, which is not Forlì as in the waterside, but Forlì, Forli, which is in Italy, sort of near Bologna. And in the summer, actually, I went to visit. I was on holiday in Italy and went to visit this exhibition. And honestly, it was extraordinary. It's the biggest exhibition of Pre-Raphaelites I've ever seen. And when I was there, it was very interesting because they, I think the head of collections from the Victoria and Albert Museum was there. Various curators from the US were there because they do these extraordinary exhibitions. It was a really good opportunity for us to network at that level internationally of those people those collections that have Pre-Raphaelite masterpieces. So that was an extremely helpful visit, an extraordinary exhibition. So we lent those. They're all safely home and back on the wall. And then currently, or it's just come back from the Tate. Anyone saw this? And Now You See Us exhibition at the Tate, and we'd lent just 2 works to that show. So that was excellent. I should have just said, the Museum of San Domenico in Forlì, they had 150,000 visitors to that exhibition alone. So we know that will drive visitors back to the UK to see our own collection. So that was an extremely interesting, and I hope that because of that visit, I'm hoping that we'll develop some more relationships, particularly with America, the Delaware Museum, and so on. Just to point out that Venus Verticordia is going to Rome, to a museum called Il Chiostro del Bramante, which I did go and visit again when I was there, and that is well, again, like a lot of these Italian museums, amazing sort of monastery that has been converted into a museum, and it's right in the heart of the historic centre of Rome. So it'll be really interesting to see that show and to see what it brings back to the Russell Cotes. So moving on to the highlights, which is the disposals. The vast majority are sort of technical, slightly technical. The curator's very excited by it, but you probably won't be. So these items are sort of items of taxidermy which have been on long-term loan to the Hampshire Cultural Trust. So again, it sort of goes back historically to when Red House Museum was. Also, we were in Hampshire. The Red House Museum had some collections, and things moved around between the collections. So they're technically ours, but they've been sitting in Hampshire Cultural Trust for about the last 30 years, and essentially they don't want them either. But we know that Bournemouth Natural Sciences Society want them. So it will actually be a transfer. So it's not actually in our collection. It's actually in Winchester, and it will come back to Bournemouth and be on display or in their collection over at the BNSS. So that's a really good result, although it doesn't free up any space. However, there is a washing machine that is, as Stuart says, we think that when the curator used to live on site, this was the curator's wife's washing machine. I'm sure he did the washing as well. And this is now up for disposal. We have offered it, I think, to Wakefield, was it? Warrington, because it was made in Warrington. We're waiting to hear back from the Warrington Museum whether they actually want it, and then it'll be at their cost that it's transferred up to Warrington. It's rather lovely, but
what will happen? Maybe ask what will happen if they say they don't want it.
Okay, you'll have this is a test to my Museum Society Code of Ethics. I think then we will open it up and offer it to all museums. So through the museum's journal, there's a sort of listing, so we can offer it. Anybody would like a washing machine, and if no other public collection wants it, then it will go to auction. And if you can't sell at auction, then it would be disposed of. But I imagine that hopefully it would be able to, unless you do you fancy
including the tongs. Yes. No, I don't want it. I declare no interest whatever. But nonetheless, good. I'm very pleased that the the loans which we're making are to very distinguished settings. They are. We shouldn't underestimate just how significant parts of our collection are to exhibitions that are taking place, worldwide, because we've traveled some of our work, as far as Japan, United States and Europe. It does endorse the significance of Russell Cotes, which I hope is better shared than has been the case hitherto. But congratulations on that. We have to formally approve the transfer and disposals. Are we in agreement? I think we are. Good. Thank you very much for that. That allows us to move to a very important item, which relates to the repair and renewal project, which is funded by Arts Council England under the MEND initiative, which is very much directed towards the conservation and replacement of services that were very exposed, particularly during the pandemic. Sarah, would you like to update us as to where we are with this and what we would be proposing to do with the funds if they are achieved?
So obviously we've got so we've got the current MEND project. The replacement of plant is now complete. I think that probably was at the last meeting. So that's all the air handling units, all the boilers and so on have now been completely replaced. And according to my colleague, we think that it's very difficult to get comparable data because of COVID and the impact that's had. And also a lot of it wasn't working for quite a period. But we think that for a certain 4-month period when it's been functioning, we can see that there's been a 25% decrease in energy consumption. So we're really hopeful that this, I mean, part of it is a green agenda. So we're hoping that it will, obviously for environmental, but also for cost savings. So that is all in place and it's being monitored very carefully because it's about ensuring stable humidity levels, but also just maintaining kind of visitor comfort. So that element is now complete and is being monitored. The conservatory has taken longer, as everything has, than we'd hoped, but as Fiona said earlier, it's really now coming on. So every day you can see more paint. They sort of dismantled. It took ages, like everything. The preparation, the whole conservatory was dismantled. You know, all the ironmongery has been blasted and cleaned and recoated. All the painting's been done. It's been deglazed, and then new glass where it's been damaged is been remade. The conservatory. The front of the conservatory had sort of the bow of the conservatory essentially had sort of tipped slightly, and that's what had then separated the glass at the top, which has allowed the glass then to fall out. So with the guidance of the conservation officer, we have sort of braced it to hold it inwards so that it will not happen again. So there's a lot of stainless steel that's gone hidden into the structure to ensure that it's kind of much more secure than it was. So that is essentially most of the decorating is almost complete. I think in the next few weeks it will be complete. We've got a new colour scheme, which is a very pale pink, a lovely sort of mushroom, and a peacock blue, which from paint scrapings that were done by a conservation professional. These were the original colours that Annie Merton would have had. So I think it will look spectacular. It will, yes, and it will look spectacular. So that's all going on. We're waiting for the glass to be where they've got this curved fluted glass in the roof. That the challenge has been to find anywhere that will be able to recreate that. But we're working with a company the builder's working with a company in Halifax, and that is being done at the moment. So we're still hopeful that it will be complete in December, and then you've got a couple of weeks to strike the scaffold. So we're not taking bets on before Christmas, but maybe, or be January for it to be complete. So that would be the conservatory complete. And then I think my plan is, until it's done, I can't quite believe it. It's been long. It's even longer than externalisation. It's 10 years of work to get to this point. Yeah, hasn't it, released? And so when it's complete, then we'll kind of work out how we're going to use it. But essentially, it will be part of the historic house. We'll put it back to how it was as a conservatory, potentially a place where people could have, afternoon tea or something like that on special occasions, that kind of stuff. But anyway, I think we'll wait till it's complete before we kind of jump the gun. So that's it. And then after that has come done, the very final bit of work is a little bit more. We've got a little bit of funding to put more cameras on the roof to stop lead theft, which is a perennial problem. So that will a little bit of work to be done. I don't think we've exactly decided what we're going to do. The new technology is such that there might be some interesting kind of new developments.
Councillor Williams?
Just a question about the conservatory. Previously used to have small exhibitions in there. Will you think about or consider doing that again, or are we moving on from that?
Oh, didn't know. Yes, interesting. Well, actually, what I was thinking of doing, I think, is when we finish it, is to open it up and ask visitors what they would like to do, and sort of just have a bit of an I think we can do. Also, I think we need to make it bring in some income. So whatever we do will probably be.
Previously, it was some pottery
Exhibitions, yeah. Sometimes we do. We've often sold things, so I think we'll see how it goes. But I think it will be the most important thing is I think is that it will be a wonderful spot to sit and just enjoy the most amazing scenery. So I think that's and the challenge will be in the future is to make sure that we maintain it properly. But so that's where we are with that one. With the so that's MEND 1, and that has to be completed by the end of March 2025. So that we really are into the sort of last few months of that. And then the next project, if we're here in February, is also under the MEND funding, but it's round 4. And that would, as said, be to deal with some of the other elements that we've discussed, which are putting the museum building at risk.
You have referred to MEND 4 in your own report, but that does list a number of sort of building projects which will endeavour to stabilise the building. I don't know whether you wish to just summarise those, although we have covered it, but it might be worth bringing members up to date with that, since we've considered MEND 3, MEND 4.
Yes, sure. So the major part of MEND 4, which would be the it's 1.5 million from the Arts Council, with a contribution from both the council and from legacies that we've done. So the total project cost would be somewhere near 1.9 million. So the majority of that funding would go to redecorating and overhauling all the seafront facade, the seafront facade. I mean, I sit in my office, you can see the cracks getting bigger. We know that whole front facade is a point of failure, and it's a big job to understand what's going on with that. So the vast majority would say the whole of that front facade would then be looking at where the drainage is coming in, where the structure is failing. So that's the main one, all the roofs, the copper canopies and so on. The joinery, the windows are all rotten and all that kind of stuff. So that whole front facade will be sorted. The museum could do with new CCTV, so that's part of it, to improve security, a lot of security measures, because it is obviously in a very vulnerable position. It's a very vulnerable building in a very vulnerable position, both environmentally and obviously in terms of antisocial behaviour. So we would look at additional security measures, and for example, the perimeter is, you can get in, rough sleepers and so on can get in just through pushing their way through the hedges. So there are things that we could do to try and improve the kind of perimeter, bearing in mind it's still a grade 2 star listed building, so we can't put up 10-foot walls and things. We would look at fire safety and protection. So again, what's happened with the museum building is that where various services have been pushed through, there would allow fire to spread if there was such a thing. So anything we can do to further compartmentalize the structure would then, provide better control should the worst happen. So there's a certain element of that. The new drainage we're discussing, the problem nowadays is you get huge amounts of rainfall in a very short period, so the drainage systems aren't fit for purpose. So we'd look at improving that to just get the water away from the building to stop the kind of pressure of this water ingress. The very small element would be to restore independent access on the front door. I don't know if you remember, though, we've got these sort of bowed doors at the museum, and historically you went to press a button and they would open, but it's all the mechanisms all been fried by all the water ingress. So at the moment you can't. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can't open the door. So this would restore that in some way. And finally, the mural. So as part of the project, we did get a mural expert to look at the mural. So if I don't know if you'll recall that the murals are often covered with white paper, Japanese paper, which is essentially just there to stop it falling down. And they're temporary measures, and they have been there for 25 years. So their suggestion was that those need to come off as soon as possible, in order that we can see what's going on behind it. So there will be quite a lot of the project would be about restoring some of the murals that are in the worst kind of condition and stabilising before we start working on the facade to make sure that we stabilise the murals so we don't lose those. So that's the major, it's quite a significant amount of work. We've structured it such that the museum would not have to close for any of it. We could do it all while we stay open, possibly with the exception of just closing for a little bit longer in January. The work would probably start, so starting this time next year. So it'll be a certain amount of prep, and then if we get it, start next year. What that doesn't do is tackle any of the issues with the rear wall of the museum, the wall that faces the Marshall Court onto the Russell Cotes Road, and we know, as I said, that you've been in, you've seen the water ingress there. So that's part of another project, which again would be another sort of million or two to try and sort that out. So step by step. So that's yeah. So that's the mend. That's mend 4.
And as you've said, Sarah, we will receive notification of the success or otherwise in February, although both Sarah and I have had a meeting with Heritage Lottery Fund, which I think was positive, and they will be very influential over the decision that is to be made. So I'm moderately optimistic that we will achieve this and actually begin what will be a very lengthy progress towards, restoring the Russell Cotes to become the gem of the local authority, in the years ahead, because it certainly deserves to be. With that said, I beg your pardon, Andy.
Just obviously that's what Sarah's done there is painting the big picture. I'm just reflecting on our previous conversation and obviously what you've just been talking about the current working conditions. Is there any merit in well, let me ask Sarah a question. I don't want to put you on the spot here. And I know the answer is yes, but is there more that BCP could be doing in the short term with something, in terms of putting the fingers in the dike, if you like, in terms of some of these smaller problems? What are they, and should we as a committee be writing to the chief executive to say, look, you wouldn't expect anybody else in BCP to be working in these conditions? Can there be a review of, or can we ask for a review of what more we can do in the short term to plug some of these, if you like, smaller issues, which are small but nevertheless extremely important that they're fixed? I don't know if there's a schedule of works that we could put together and say these need to be done because they're urgent.
Sarah.
Yes, I don't know if Matt is on the call and whether he would like to respond in terms of what the best way of trying to get some. Because obviously, yes, I mean, we've got. I mean, I looked at it today. We've got black, well, it's like the black mold and things like that. Is so there's something we can't be waiting. We can't be waiting for another year or two. We're just going to take that long, isn't it, to sort it? So some things need to be done. So I don't know if Matty knows has got some suggestions as to what the best way of leveraging some help would be.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Hello, members. Just in relation to kind of the wider council's estate, it's probably important to stress what pressure we're under from a repairs and maintenance point of view. So just to put this building in the context of that wider estate, we have a significant amount of repairs and maintenance money each year, but it's probably some way short of what we would typically need in any particular year. So each year we spend more on essential repairs than we have a budget for. That said, what we try and do with that money is prioritise the things that are the most urgent, the things that keep buildings open, the things that keep staff being able to work from those buildings. So I would certainly be interested to hear about some of the additional bits and pieces that might go above that threshold, and things that we should we should find the resources to do. But it'd be wrong if I didn't put it in that context that, you know, every week we might be talking about a building where a boiler is gone and it's going to cost us £10,000-20,000 to replace. So it's only right that we try and prioritise as effectively as we can. And I think Sarah's already mentioned that I think in terms of responding, often we might do some response, but in an ideal world we'd go further than responding, and we'd not just react to the problem, we'd solve it properly. And I think, you know, it's understandable that there might be a frustration that sometimes, you know, we're just plugging the gap rather than necessarily solving the problem on a sustainable basis. So more than happy to have that conversation, and we'll do with Sarah outside this meeting, but I wouldn't want to make any promises that our resources might not be able to deliver on. Each year, as I said, we have a big budget. It's about £1 million for the entire estate, but I could probably spend 2, 3, 4 times that, and we probably could spend all of that on on the museum alone, let alone on the wider estate.
Thank you very much. I think a conversation between yourself and Sarah, which the contents of which might then be reported back to this committee. But thank you for that invitation, at least. Thank you. And I think, you know, your engagement, Andy, in this would be most helpful. Thank you. This allows us to move to agenda item 8, which is really rather a historic moment for the Russell Cotes Museum and Gallery. This item relates to the progress of the Russell Cotes to becoming an independent trust, something which has been discussed over many, many years. And you have within your papers the scheme which agrees the future governance framework for the new corporation or the new corporate trustee, and the articles of association for the new company, which will be limited by guarantee and which will act in due course as the corporate trustee. I understand that these two documents have now been agreed between solicitors acting on behalf of the Museum and Gallery, Sharp Pritchard, the solicitors representing BCP, and in conversation with the Charity Commission, who will in due course progress these to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, where we will be seeking Secretary of State approval for the scheme and the associated articles. Now, if members wish to discuss any of the detail of those documents, that would be in closed session. But if those matters are agreed and have been available for your scrutiny on a number of occasions previously, I think we can progress this matter without closure of the formal meeting. Please advise me. I think agreement is here, NEMCOM. I will ask for that to be formally approved in just a moment, but if that is our view, we are able to progress the matter. I said at the beginning it was historic because from this moment on, the articles and scheme will be passed formally to the charity commissioners, who will then transact the business to favour incorporation at a date to be, we will be informed of it. We do not control that date, but we are looking towards the beginning of the financial year in 2025 in April, or alternatively some 6 months after that date. Those will be confirmed to the committee in due course. With that said, can I ask for your formal approval of the scheme and the Articles of Association? Thank you very much, NEMCOM. That allows us to move to item 9, which is the approval of museum policies. which are required for a re-accreditation of the museum and gallery by Arts Council England. As you've alluded already, Sarah, there is a sort of twist in this, because one of the crucial matters for us is to reform the governance arrangements which are currently in place, which will be reformed by the articles and scheme that we've just discussed. And therefore, we must proceed with the reaccreditation on the basis of what will be rather than what is. But perhaps you can help us with.
Well, I think that yeah, I think we go through. Well, in the last accreditation round, the issues with the governance were identified by the Arts Council. It was one of the issues that we needed to address by the next return. So we will have to kind of fully articulate where we are. So I think it's just kind of laying out exactly where we are, what we are in now, and where we're trying to get to. So I think it's just laying that, and it'd be interesting to see how they respond. I have to reply by the 1st of May, and the problem is, isn't it, is that we don't know when anything's going to happen, what we're going to be in by the. So I can't leave everything to the 1st of May, and then we don't know where we are. So I think we're just going to have to proceed, and it could be quite a messy sort of process. But I think that's all we can do.
Good. Just to conclude, what is it about the accreditation which is so important to Russell Cotes?
So I think the issue with a lot of schemes, particularly things like funding schemes from Arts Council and so on, are only open to Museum Star accredited. So if you're not accredited, you wouldn't be able to borrow paintings, you wouldn't be able to apply for various grants and so on and so forth. So and obviously in terms of best practice, you know, as a governing body, we would want to make sure that we do as well as we can within the resources and the capacity that we have. So do you want me to just talk through the two items that I've put forward for? Yeah. So I mean, well, because I thought we were going to be accredited back in 2020. That's when we should have been due, obviously, 5 years on. So we did a lot of work. Some for those members who were on the committee then will remember that I gave you an awful lot of very boring policy and plan documents so that we got everything signed off. Everything you have to have, I don't know, half a dozen policies and procedures signed off by your managing committee, and it has to be within 5 years. They have to be in date by 5 years. So the vast majority of the work was done back in 2021-22 when I was anticipating a request to make a return. But just obviously now we have actually finally been invited. I just had to go back through and just double check them. So there were two items which weren't quite, I didn't think, up to standard. So one is the documentation policy and plan, which is here. So this, I mean, from a museum point of view, documentation is critical to our understanding of our collection, because if you don't know where it's come from, who gave it, that you've got all that kind of copyright information, or, you know, for example, if it's if it's an object from world cultures and you don't know where it's from, or, you know, what in one context it was given, then you know, that's really important information. And in order to kind of put exhibitions on, we need that documentation in order to be able to be accountable for whether we've still got the things that we've got. We need, again, a really good mechanism for ensuring that we're holding this information in the correct form, and that it's backed up, etc., etc. It is absolutely critical part of museum kind of infrastructure. So the policy that we had just didn't really, I don't think, adequately talk about accountability and standards. So I've just kind of beefed that up with the curator, so that we've just double checked that we are happy with the way we're doing things, and that it meets the standards that are required. The challenge for us is that we, like many museums, we don't necessarily have good control of all our documentation. You know, the museum's been operational for 100 years, and they didn't have the same kind of approach to these things 100 years ago. So it's marrying these things up and ensuring that we've got the best we can do, and that we are continually trying to improve what we've got, improve the information, improve our knowledge, but within very limited resources that we have, which is basically one curator who's doing all of this work. So that's that policy. I don't very happy to take questions on it. The other thing is the forward plan. So under the requirements of accreditation, you have to have a forward plan, which is usually a 5-year document that outlines the sort of plans for the museum. And also as part of that, for accreditation, you have to have 2 years with budgets. So you have to have the budgets for the next 2 years outlined. We did a forward plan back in 2019, which we thought was temporary. I don't know if you still remember, because we thought we'd be independent within a few years. But here we are 5 years on and we're still where we are. So obviously this is now is not the time to be rewriting our forward plan, because we're obviously about to change governance quite significantly. And the next, corporate trustee will maybe, will be an opportunity for them to take a view on what they think the priorities for the museum are. I also had to produce a business plan for the Arts Council grant, for the MEND4 grant. They required a business plan. So what I've done is a transitional plan. And essentially it covers the next couple of years on the basis of being as is, so as part of the council, and gives a notional date for independence of the 1st of April 2026, because I couldn't, just because it would just try and do that halfway through the financial year or whatever. It wasn't worth it. So, and essentially it's business as usual, with the sort of ambition of improving the care of and the maintenance of the museum building and the collections as being the primary objective of the new trustee. So it's essentially a transitional plan, and as soon as the new board is in place, I'm sure they will want to look at what we want to do and reframe it. But that is what I've done, because it requires a budget for the next 2 years. So this has got a budget for the next 5 years. I think that will be sufficient from the Arts Council point of view. Because they do say they don't want you to go to extra work for this. It's just using what you already have. So that's what I've done, and it's essentially that. So so that's the business plan. And what I've also given out to some people who are here is this forward plan, action plan, which again is part of accreditation, and this shows the different ambitions that we have and these sort of smart measures that we're going to achieve it. A lot of this is apple pie and motherhood. It's about increasing your audiences, raising more money. I mean, the things that every museum will want to do, but it's kind of how you deliver that. So this is kind of how I tend to operate on a day-to-day basis with the team, to make sure that we're all kind of working towards these kind of specific aims. And I'm sure that they will remain similar in the future, because as I said, raising more income or driving audiences or working in partnership, these are the kind of things that I'm sure we'll want to do in some format, but we may well want to review. So that is what I'm presenting to you, if that sort of makes sense, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Sarah on this matter, remembering that we will be submitting this at the latest the 1st of May, but there'll be a lot of iteration with the officers of Arts Council, I think, in the process as we get nearer that end date. But it is a very important issue, but it will, together with incorporation, set in place sort of where the museum and gallery is charted certainly for the 5 years ahead. Fiona.
Will this would improve developing a volunteer policy being relevant for this as well?
Yes, so I think certainly. So there are the developing the skills of volunteer staff and trustees is one of the sort of headline items, and then it's kind of underneath that. So yes, I think there is. I mean, is there a policy? No, there isn't a policy. Yes, okay, so that should definitely go on there. So I can add that to any comments. It's yes within that. Yeah. So that would fit in. So that's the thing that fits into that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that you would wish to put to Sarah? In which case, I can move to item 10, which is the date of the next meeting, which is on Monday, 20th of January at 2 o'clock. That's 2025. And to thank you all very much for your attendance and contributions this afternoon. Thank you.